Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are back. This is our second Beyond the Gatekeepers in this new year. We're so glad to have you. We ask that you do us a big favor and start sharing to our Facebook family, our YouTube family, our Instagram family. We say welcome, welcome, welcome. Do us a big favor and start sharing, letting folks know that we are on and we have a great, great conversation on in store for you on tonight. So we're excited about that. And we want to make sure that you are on to watch. We appreciate you all very, very much for joining in. I see people coming in right now. It's good to see all of your faces. We're excited to have you on tonight. Certainly, I don't do the show alone. I want to bring her up right now. Only because I want to talk about something. So our presiding prelate is with us tonight of the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries, but she is also the senior pastor of City of Refuge United Church of Christ in the person of Bishop Yvette A. Flunder. As you always do, welcome, Bishop Flunder.
Welcome is first of all, I want to say welcome to you, Bishop Vanessa.
Yes,
we have had a busy season.
We have.
Yes, we have. But we have done some incredible work. And I just want everybody to know that I bless God for Bishop Vanessa M. Brown and what it is that she has done and who she is to me and who she is to the work that we are. And every so often, I need you all to send her a little something and thank her so very much for the gift that she is. Yes. Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you so much, Bishop. So listen, Bishop, we got a lot of business taken care of when we was in Las Vegas, and we're glad about that. And so we got some new executive orders, some new things have happened. One of the things I wanted to talk about is this new executive order that's saying that they don't want to allow trans to have housing, and they want to discriminate against our trans population as it relates to housing. And I know you could say a lot about that, and I wanted to do that before we brought our guest on. So y'all listen up to Bishop Flunder around housing and why we desperately need it for our trans community.
I think that the real deep-seated effort to destroy our trans community, and I think it is important, really deeply important, that it is even among the trans community focused much more on male to female trans.
Yes.
Even than female to male trans. Folks, if you notice, that's basically what they see as the definition of trans without any understanding of all the many ways. It's, the whole conversation about being a trans person, transgender person, a gender nonconforming person. There are many different ways in which people identify. They have different kinds of surgeries. They have different kinds of medications. They have different kinds of body realities. That's the other piece of this. Some things that people are born with that has to do with their anatomy.
Yes.
Ways in which their bodies, with no decision being made about being trans, their bodies are sometimes have both genitalia simultaneously. You don't hear anything about that piece of it in terms of how do we identify trans? So understand that most of the times when people are talking about this, the frustration is more the male to female trans folks that are creating this kind of response in this season of incredibly malicious heteronormativity.
Yes.
And something that we really do need to take, it is as complicated as the time of slavery was about Black people and white people, and Black people being only 2/3 human, so things could be done. So I'm going to set that aside and say that anything that will hurt or damage or bring an end to this group of people, God's people, our people, people, anything that will make them consider either leaving the country or perhaps hiding out, or hopefully, in the case of many of them, committing suicide. Anything that can be done to keep that from happening. No jobs, no housing, no home loans. All of those things are a part of the rabid masculinity in this country that thinks that somehow, again, 1%, one maybe and a little change percent of the population has got to be in the news every day, diminished and made afraid over and over. And I'll end with this. That is not how the heart of God sees this. And because the heart of God loves every single one of our trans family members, I would leave it with this, Bishop Vanessa. I would say to the current president and to everyone who is so weak that they cannot understand that there's such thing as someone who is an other, I would say to each of them, your arms are too short to box with God. And you are going to find out how much God loves God's creation outside of what it is perhaps you are and what it is or how it is that you came into your life, how you came into your money, how you came into your power. God does not love any one of us more than any of the rest of us. I think that and one more thing, Bishop Vanessa, I know because you got me on this. You need to take a good look at how other communities have been able to embrace the realities of 4 or 5 different gender expressions. It's not trans or other. There are several different ways that gender shows itself in communities. Do some research. Some of it is physical, some of it is emotional, some of it is a part of a decision that people made in the changing of their genitalia. Whatever the case may be, it is more than just them and us. It's a much broader conversation. So I'll stop here. I hope we say something about this continually, and folks need to know that we are doing our work in community to put a stop to this heinous, hateful, wicked reality that is happening to our transgender nonconforming siblings. God bless you.
Thank you so much for that, Bishop Flunder. You all are tuning into Beyond the Gatekeepers. I want you all to know that we do things. We have authors. We talk about current events through a theological and justice-informed lens. We have people that are coming in, filmmakers, all of that. But I feel like the time that we're in calls for us to constantly say something about current events. So at the top of every show, we're going to start talking about more current events. Okay? I think that that's important to us. We need to hear that. And so I want to shout out those who are already here that are joining in with us. And we're asking that you share. Chuck Hunt is here from Monroe. Reginald Nichols is here from Stockton, California. We welcome you. Courtney A. Brown from Baton Rouge, Louisiana in the house. God bless you. Murder Soto, welcome. God bless you. Thank you for being on. Luke Glasgow on YouTube. Thank you. Maria Harris. Luke Glasgow is from Missouri, Bishop. Maria Harris, Denver, Colorado on YouTube. Pastor Erica, Pennsylvania. James Thomas Pierman, California. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Minister David, East Orange and Harlem. Darlene Connell, Queens. Marlene C. McLaurin, Deacon, thank you so much for Baltimore Unity Fellowship Church Movement. And Murder Soto is from Connecticut. So we say God bless you to all. We thank you for joining. And we want you all to give us one more push out there so that people will know that we are on. I see you, Reverend Tanya Jackson. Thank you for being on. And also Reverend Pamela K. Williams, Pastor Williams, thank you for being on. Pennsylvania's in the house. Delaware is in the house. And Reverend Karen Coleman is on with us from Boston, Massachusetts. Thank you so much. Pastor Kim Kendrick here, California, is in the house. Claudia Vieira Allen is here with us, Richmond, California. Daily DJ James, thank you for being on with us, Reverend DJ. Nashville, Tennessee is in the house. And Apostle Joseph B. Devlin is with us, and I believe from Florida. So our guests, we want to bring them on. And Naquita Elmore, thank you so much for being on with us. Columbus, Ohio is here. Thank you so much. And we're asking that you share. We have a great conversation for you tonight with a great author. in the name of Andrew Krinks. Dr. Andrew Krinks is a writer, an educator, and movement builder, and he has a book out. And I hope that you all can go and get the book, and you'll get all the information on the book on tonight. And we're going to tell you all about it. But before we do, we're asking Dr. Andrew Krinks to please come and greet our audience on tonight.
It's a pleasure to be with you all. Thank you for having me. I'm just, grateful for the opportunity to share about the book, but beyond that, grateful for the work you all are doing. Grateful for the words, Bishop Flunder, that you just shared. Want to echo and affirm, say amen to those words about our trans siblings. So it is great to be here.
Thank you so much. We want to get that book up on the screen. And we want to let you all know the name of the book tonight that we're talking about is White Property, Black Trespass. White Property, Black Trespass, Racial Capitalism, and the Religious Function of Mass Criminalization by Dr. Andrew Krinks. So we want to get this book. Dr. Andrew is offering a special 30% off on the book, but he's also giving away a book on tonight. And so you're going to see all that get dropped down in the chat and the comment sections everywhere. And we appreciate that. And there's a code that you're going to use, NYUAU30. That's to get your 30% off when you put that down for you so you can see it. And I think that might be me having a bit of difficulty. I'm not sure if I'm still freezing or not. You all will tell me. Could be, but
You had
in the middle of
you had a blip, but you came back.
I came back. Okay. Reverend Hilda Lloyd is on, Bishop Flunder, with us, as well as from UFC Baltimore, our beloved Colette Walker, faithful St. Louis is in the house. Glad you're here. And Albert Reed from Colleen, Texas, because Albert Reed is also very faithful to us, and we appreciate him very much. Dr. Krinks, this is a great book. I don't know if you had people tell you that, but it is a really great book. And something that me and Bishop Flunder was mentioning on today, that it is a right now kind of book. It's a book that we need to be reading right away. So my first question to you, and I know Bishop Flunder can weigh on this. I see you, Dr. Charles Waterson, thank you for being on. You talk about whiteness. I love the way you talk about whiteness, being a white man. You are for real when you do it in this book. It's not a game for you. And you talk about whiteness as a religion. I need us to hear this tonight. One that demands allegiance and offers the false promise of wholeness through racial, gender, and class inheritances. That's what you say. But you also call that clinging spiritual death. Can you say more about how whiteness functions as a religion and why holding on to it leads to destruction rather than life?
Absolutely. Yeah, I wish it wasn't such a right now book, but it appears that we very much remain in the time in which these things are relevant. And yeah, so in terms of thinking about what whiteness is, how it's a religion, and how clinging to it is a form of spiritual death. One of the places I like to start in talking about whiteness is the line that I repeat throughout the book as a kind of refrain, which comes from W.E.B. Du Bois in his book, The Souls of White Folk, where he is talking in very poetic terms about what is this thing, whiteness? What is it that it's so valued, that it so structures the world in which we live? And at the end of the kind of introduction to that text, he has this line where he says that whiteness is ownership of the earth forever and ever. Amen. And a lot of folks who will cite Du Bois in that essay will at times leave off the forever and ever. Amen from that line, which I think is a mistake, because it's the forever and ever amen of that line from Du Bois in describing what whiteness is that is really clarifying about how whiteness constitutes a kind of a religious reality and a religion itself. And what I take him to be saying, and how what I elaborate on this throughout the book, is that in essence, whiteness is the aspiration to godlike power over people and planet. It is the illusion that it is possible to transcend finitude, mortality, to transcend relationality and the need for others. All the things that make us human, it's a desire to transcend those things in a lot of ways. And so um, that is also the reason that it's a form of spiritual death, because it is an aspiration to a kind of transcendence that entails abandoning the things that make us human, which includes relationship with others, which includes reciprocity and interdependence and things like that. So whiteness is this desire to transcend all of these things in the name of control of people and planet, but in fact, in pursuit of that transcendence, it is a form of self-debasement ultimately and spiritual death. In that, again, it's to take leave of the things that make us human, and that and the things through which we find God, including other people and reciprocity with other people. So there's plenty more that could be said about the fact that Euro-Christian tradition makes whiteness and Americanness and property ownership all synonymous, essentially, and that to speak of one is to speak of others, and the fact that whiteness is comes into being as this form of opposition over against all other people, and that requires others to be dehumanized in order for it to be what it's aspiring to be. So.
Thank you so very much. There's several things that come up for me, and I applaud basically everything that you have said and have mused internally over the years about this over and over and over again, I must say, primarily because the construct of white is a combination of several European realities, let's put it that way, who at one time, as I'm sure you in your research know very well, that at one time all hated one another, essentially. And everybody that identified in their own white way, let's just say during that thing, I would say white tribes were at each other's throats in terms of who was superior and who, Irish, English, some French, a little bit of Spanish. They were a little dark, but if you add it all up together, the group of Europeans who became a reality of oneness, and then that oneness somehow felt itself to be superior, is a sickness that is not unique to this group. It also happened among people in Africa. It happened among people who were a part of what we now call Jewish people. Let's put it that way. Not non-European Jews. I'm speaking of people that were born in and out of Palestinian type.
Right.
What amazes me is the way in which this happens over and over again.
Yeah.
Where a group of people have found a common denominator that makes them have superiority. Then that gives them the wherewithal to diminish and often destroy, it seems to me, whoever doesn't make the cut, okay? And as it related to this country, people who came over here and not only took the land from the people who were the indigenous people, but went and got my ancestors and brought them over here and diminished all of us, as they became a crew, a group. What do you think?
Right.
Perhaps this is the question that I have tonight. What do you feel about the human need to do this
Yeah.
over and over, even if it's a group of folks that are my color on the continent of Africa, indigenous Africans who may find themselves also feeling, and while, if you will share with us a little, could you also speak to how it evidences itself in religion?
That's great, because that was going to be actually my next question on the doctrine of discovery. So
Great minds run together. Anyway, help us out, brother.
Sure, I'll try. I mean, what an enormous question. The way that I navigate this question as it relates to the phenomenon of whiteness, but I think it applies beyond whiteness as well. Um, One of the kind of more human ways that I try to make sense of it is just fear of death, uh, fear of finitude and mortality, the inability to mm, to see death as anything other than an enemy and as a thing to be fearful of. Now, certainly, that's my reality. Like, I'm afraid of death. Where I think most people, to some degree, um, fear it, and that's a normal thing to have, I think. But not just death, so not just mortality, but also finitude. That we constantly run up against the limits of our capacities to control our environment and our situation and our future, and even our feelings, like the things that happen inside of us and around us. And there's something about being unable to control those things, that makes people generally, and sometimes groups of people, specifically, clamor for control, or like grasp after control in some way. Where can I get control from? And one of the best ways to find control is by controlling the people around you. And so if you have some sense of insecurity about yourself, or about the fact that you have limits on your abilities, or your mortality, or whatever it may be, that a way to kind of lessen the pain of that lack of control is to control the people and the things around you. So I think that I see in whiteness, certainly a great fear of vulnerability, a great fear of relationality and reciprocity and mutuality, um, and the desire for control as a desire to, as a means of trying to outrun the fact of one's finitude, to make one self as if one were God, which requires making others as if they were very much not God and even not human. So that's a bit
wow.
about how I understand that reality. Yeah.
Thank you for that. One of the sisters here, Colette Walker, says it's so rare to hear white folks talk about their whiteness. They usually don't have to check any formal boxes that signal their whiteness. It always just is.
Hmm.
So thank you for being able to do that. But to piggyback on all that Bishop Flunder was just talking about, I mentioned the doctrine of discovery, because the doctrine of discovery gave theological cover to genocide and theft in the name of empire, right? Is it still, I mean, I'm answering my own question, but I want to hear from you because you wrote the book. Is it still shaping our laws, our churches, and our policies today?
Undeniably, it is. There are just a multitude of ways in which the theological and political rationale that undergirds something like the doctrine of discovery still animates a lot of what we see today. I was thinking earlier about a quote I saw in passing recently from somebody who does wealth management. services with some of the wealthiest people in the world, and they had this remark that the folks who are his clients presume themselves to be like gods on earth, who have kind of an innate permission to own all things. And so hence the line from Du Bois, ownership of the earth forever and ever, amen, that's throughout the book. But I bring that up to say that there is this presumption of the capacity to possess infinitely. So I find it really fascinating that Du Bois will say, what is whiteness? And essentially he's saying it's the capacity for infinite possession, ownership of the earth forever and ever, amen, borrowing from the Lord's Prayer, which is preceded, that line is preceded, forever and ever, amen, with, for thine is the kingdom, power, and the glory. So all things belong to God. And so it's in essence saying, well, whiteness takes the place of God, which David Walker famously put in his appeal, that if white folks could, they obviously would dethrone Jehovah and place themselves upon the throne, is his line. And I think that we see this today with at all levels. So levels that are kind of more localized, including I narrate in the middle of my book an experience of my neighbor, black neighbor, being arrested for being accused of trespassing by a white man who was flipping a house and to sell it for a huge profit. And there was this like sense of the protection of property that then translated into him calling me up to his porch to say, hey, between us, where your black neighbors can't hear me, like watch your back around here, like white person to white person. And that something about that, as a white guy, I'm going to tell you how to protect yourself around your black neighbors, that was related to this act of, calling the cops on somebody for allegedly trespassing on a property. So there's on that micro level, but then there's also the president saying that he is going to claim all of this land. He's renaming the Gulf of Mexico, wanting
The
Greenland or
Gulf of
Canada.
America. Yes,
Right.
yes, yes,
All
yes.
these different kind of like imperialist
Mm,
aspirations for ultimate possession, which, by the way, Du Bois, as an anti-imperialist, was very much talking in the context of U.S. imperialism when he described whiteness as ownership of the earth forever and ever, amen. And I think we're in a moment again of a kind of like raw, naked, unashamed imperialism
yeah.
that is being channeled through the powers that be in this present moment, and even in recent years as well. Certainly, it hasn't ever gone away. But yeah, so all that to say, clearly there is this kind of presumption of godlike power that says, if I want that, I will have it and I will take it. The same which undergirded the doctrine of discovery, that said that if I find this, it's mine. Which you have John Locke in the 1600s writing that God commands humans to subdue the earth and make it fruitful, etc. And so that will become a justification for the displacement, the violent displacement of indigenous peoples, because they were not possessing the land in the way that Europeans said that you should possess land, which they said was the way God wanted them to possess land. So therefore, mass expulsion from land becomes legitimized in a theological way. So the dynamic, yes, remains with us, unfortunately.
I
Yeah.
remember very well growing up, Bishop Vanessa and Dr. Krinks, I remember very well growing up in the church as a African American Pentecostal. Every Jesus was blonde haired, every single one, blonde haired, blue eyes, and long, straight blonde hair and blue eyes.
Absolutely.
It was amazing, and absolutely, to your point, I just figured that that's what Jesus looked like. That was Jesus. That and everybody would know that Jesus was white. And I can remember how disturbed I was when I got among people that said Jesus was in fact a Palestinian Jew, more than likely.
How disturbed were you, Bishop?
I was deeply disturbed. I thought that they had cursing God, because everybody knew Jesus was blonde and had blue eyes, and he was always looking up, and he was really clean. That's the other thing. He was extremely clean. His little lips had a little color in it, and he was really clean. And that we needed to thank God that Jesus thought of us.
Yes.
Given as much as he was white Jesus. That was white Jesus. We were coming along. And it was very hard for me to believe as a child that Jesus was brown. It was very hard for me to embrace that in my heart, in my mind, in my theology, and the fact that this flip that was made specifically to make me see that look as being the look that imitated God in some way.
Absolutely. Listen, everybody, I know you're joining in and people are asking. This is Dr. Andrew Krinks. This book is White Property, Black Trespass, Racial Capitalism, and the Religious Function of Mass Criminalization. I want you all to purchase the book. Pastor Sue has given you a way to purchase the book, but I also want you all to know that we're going to do a giveaway tonight. It's going to be a free book giveaway. If you type the hashtag in Beyond the Gatekeepers, you will win the opportunity to get a book. I think that's very important. It's very important to where we are right now. We're living in this right now. Again, somebody said, I lived in it before. Well, you're living it again. It's happening right before our eyes, right? There's some people that have just come in. Miss Penny's Kitchen from Portugal is here. And we see Valerie Oliver is here. Thank you, Valerie, for being here. Bishop Levi Richards is here. Thank you for being on. Dr. Thunderword Cohen is here. So glad you're here. Seattle, Washington is in the house. I just wanted to make sure that I shouted them out really, really quickly. And Timothy Hughes is with us on tonight. And we greet you all and we say, please share this conversation. Dr. Krinks, so thank you for bringing us up to where we are, and letting us know, that what we're seeing and what we've written about, the doctrine of discovery, all of that is still shaping our laws, still shaping our churches, still shaping our policies today. I see you, Revolution. Thank you. I see you. You're down as Pretty Shrink. Of course, we know that's not your name, but thank you for being on with us tonight. Tanya Jenkins Montague, thank you for being on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. We're glad. You argue for a way, Dr. Krinks, of addressing harm, which I appreciate in the book. And that the way that you argue for it, it refuses to throw people away. I think that's so important, because those who do harm are often carrying their own wounds, right? How did you come to understand this truth, and what does it ask of us in practice?
Thanks for that question. I arrived at the conclusion that there are ways to address harm other than discarding people through relationship with discarded people, actually, primarily in the form of caged people, imprisoned people, and other criminalized people. A lot of my work has been to help to amplify the experiences and stories of folks who have experienced harm in the form of state violence, and which is often a harm that's preceded by other forms of interpersonal violence that they experienced prior to experiencing state violence. And so it's through relationship with people who have essentially been discarded by our society that helped clarify for me, for one thing, just how contrary it is to God's vision for the world, that anyone be, discarded for any reason, and a vision of the gospel that in which there are room for all who, at least those who are willing to live in reciprocity with one another, and even those who have struggled to do so but can still learn to do so. And I also learned it through the work of organizing, bringing people together to try to change conditions of dispossession and deprivation, and people not being able to meet their needs, which in turn leads people to be more likely to harm others because their own needs aren't being met in various ways. And it's this, endless cycle, so many times. And it's remarkable that the primary way that our society deals with people hurting one another is to enact more violence upon people in the form of capture and caging, of police contacts and of imprisonment and even surveillance, and post-release discrimination, and it goes on and on. That in response to somebody hurting somebody, that we hurt them in return. And so it fundamentally misunderstands how we disrupt cycles of harm. If we think that the way to get ourselves out of cycles of harm is to just enact more violence upon people in response to the harm they've done, then we're only going to be living with a cycle of violence that we can't break out of. And so I've been really compelled by the work of prison and police abolitionists and transformative and restorative justice practitioners and healing justice practitioners and others who have made a way, where it seems we only have one option, which is to respond with vengeance, and to put people away and to disappear them essentially from our communities. But instead, that there are ways to respond to harm that actually, it's not just that they're more compassionate or that they are quicker to forgive. It's not even that. It's that there's an understanding that if you do the hard work of trying to understand why harm happens in the first place, to go upstream a bit, why did this happen in the first place? Why, were you in a position where, um, you know, you felt like it was your only option to survive to, assault somebody in this way, or the only way to deal with what you were going through was to hurt this other person in this way? Um, to actually go upstream to figure out what are the conditions that made that seem so inevitable, and to disrupt the cycle there, which actually can meet the needs of survivors more than our current system does. So our current system prohibits the kind of space necessary to even like share how you've been impacted in a way that can shape the outcome of what happens to the person who hurt you. Well, this is what's so revolutionary about restorative and transformative justice practitioners and their work, is that they allow survivors to say, here's how I was hurt. Here is how I would like it to be made right again. And I want to say it to the person when I'm ready, if I'm ready, or someone else will say it for me. And what they get in return is infinitely better than what our current carceral system gives people, which is the solace of knowing that the person who hurt you is living in a cage. Like that's not gonna that may have some temporary like relief, separation if somebody has hurt you, but in the long run, it essentially guarantees that the cycle will not be broken, and that more harm will come as a result. And so, yeah, I mean, I believe that discarding people is what whiteness does. It's what all these systems of capitalism and colonialism do. They're built on discarding people. And so if we want to create communities where we're addressing harm in fruitful and generative ways that actually meet the needs of survivors and that disrupt cycles of violence, then we would respond in ways that don't discard.
Powerful. Thank you so much. Bishop Flunder, go ahead.
It's an incredible weakness, I believe. The whole concept of why do we have to die for you to live? It's a weakness that requires that someone else has to suffer in order for someone else to have power. And I know it's gone on
Yes,
for
yes,
eons,
yes.
but it's a weakness. Why do we have to? I made a note to myself. Why do we have to decrease in order for someone else to increase?
Hmm.
Why is it that we cannot be together
Yes.
in a level playing field, essentially,
Mm.
and people succeed not because of their bloodline, but they succeed because of their ability or their success or
Yes.
their work. Why? And I
Mm-hmm.
have never really understood that, but I've seen it over and over and over and over in my life. Why
Mm-hmm.
why does someone have to be destroyed? And systemically, Bishop Vanessa and Dr. Andrew, I got it right?
Mhm.
Okay. And Dr. Andrew, um, when a big thing, this is a case in point, Bishop Vanessa, that
Yes.
theological education was necessary for men to go to theological education and
Mm-hmm.
learn to be pastors. And you've
Mm-hmm.
heard me say before on Gatekeepers, when I first came into the idea of theological education, they told me
Mm-hmm.
that I could learn to teach children and that I could learn to be a musician. And that was it.
Yeah.
Play the piano and
That's
I
it.
could teach children. That was all the theological anything I could do. Well,
Mm.
this was a male dominated reality,
Right.
right? And as time went along, that began to break open. But here's the interesting thing. Now
Mm-hmm.
that several women, several people of color, several same gender loving people are involved in theological education, folks have stopped sending money
Absolutely.
and are somehow suggesting that our credentials and our degrees don't really matter anymore because
Yeah.
the playing field got level. Say something about that. Would you just for a minute? I know that it is written in several ways in your book, but this whole idea of diminishing what was yesterday so powerful because a group of people
Yes.
now are showing up and are suggesting by their presence that it ain't that hard to get. That's the point.
Mm.
The point that I like. Please, would you say something about that too?
Mm-hmm.
Sure, sure. Yeah, so the of course in my book the main places that I identify this dynamic taking place is in, what I call patriarchal whiteness, which
Yes.
is also possessive whiteness. Um, and but certainly it shows up amongst others as well. But I one of the ways I interpret this is that this is a dynamic deeply rooted in a mindset of scarcity,
Mm.
that there is not enough to go around for all of us, and that if somebody else has, that means that something has been taken from me in some way. And it's a guiding outlook or myth even about the fabric of reality itself, that scarcity is a fundamental principle as opposed to abundance, which requires competition. It requires hoarding. It requires making sure I get mine because someone else might get it before I do, which leads to all kinds of violence and harm and disarray and pain and suffering. And I also think it's related to what I had spoke about earlier with this dynamic of, I'm almost tempted to say now, I don't say it this way in the book, but a kind of emotional immaturity that says that, the fact that I can't control my situation around me or control the behaviors of others around me or control what happens to me, creates anxiety. I can't find peace with the fact that I'm not in control, and I have to exert it some way or another, in order to find peace or in order to find a sense of solace, or a sense of stability. And so I think that those two things, a scarcity mindset that says that in order for me to have, someone else has to have something taken away from them, and vice versa. And also this kind of fear of vulnerability, of relationality, um, the antidote to which is absolute individualism and solitude away from the risk of being hurt by others or whatever. And so that's how I read what patriarchal whiteness and possessive whiteness are all about, is it's this desire born out of a sense of anxiety, a sense of scarcity, that in order for me to have and to thrive, others must be made low in some way. And so, I have a subsection in one of my chapters, kind of setting up this opposition of deification on the one hand and destruction on the other. That in order for white propertied people to claim a kind of divinity, an ultimate proximity to God, such that they even exercise a degree of godlike power, in order for that to happen, uh, it is imperative that others be destroyed in the process. And it's what makes supremacies of all kinds so deadly, is that they really are premised on the destruction of others. And I don't think that we grasp that enough in our current discourse. That when we observe the rhetorical and physical violence coming out of the present White House, in the form of putting targets on trans people, on immigrants, on other queer people, on all kinds of people, of people of color, of Black people, anybody who lifts up diversity, equity, inclusion, etc. That it's not just, I'm always dissatisfied by hatred as the term that helps us understand, because hatred seems like it has no purpose. Like, it's just kind of like, what's behind hatred? It seems like it's just so random. Why are you putting a target on me? But like, I think that the better way to understand these types of oppressions is that they are means by which those doing the oppressing, those doing the targeting, those doing the violence and the criminalization, that is a means by which they become empowered, or get a sense of power. And so, what in my book I talk about how, if we want to understand why we have police and prisons, for instance, we got to understand not just who they're wielded against, but who they're wielded for. Like, for whose benefit are they
That's right.
wielded?
Who's gaining from it? Who's going to gain from
Exactly.
it? Who's going to
Exactly.
get the most money from it? That's really the bottom line.
Exactly. So I think that that's really the way that I understand why these dynamics take place. And I think that if we don't take seriously the fact that people want others to suffer because they have the impression that that makes them well or whole,
Yeah,
then we don't understand what's going on. We got to reckon with that.
really don't. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Listen,
Well,
if you have, absolutely, if you have questions, please write the word question. We want to get, one or two questions in from the audience for Dr. Andrew. And I have two more questions left for you. One of them is, you have just really explained so well your book, but then overall, what the, I don't want to make light of it, but what the circumstances are, what, as we see it, as we know it to be, even in our present government, right? What would you say to white persons who see your title of your book, hear your words, and feel like they're being condemned?
Yeah, it's a great question. I recently had someone ask me that in another venue, and I really take the question seriously, because the reality is that a lot of white people will pick it up and feel
Absolutely.
some kind of way about it.
Mhm.
And what I say in response to that is, first of all, that I don't believe that guilt is a helpful motivator, at least in terms of the kinds of action we need to like make transformative change in our world. So in other words, I am not interested in, I'm not the caricature of white people that, you know, far right people will decry as like, you know, a reduction of like like you're a race traitor, which I think is a great thing to be, frankly, if you're a white person, but not in the sense of hating other white people. Like I'm not. It's not about self-hatred. It's not about me feeling bad that I am white, that I am an inheritor of whiteness, I should say. Um, that I'm not asking anyone to feel bad, even necessarily about it, because I understand whiteness. You know, as a white person, I understand whiteness as something amounting to kind of like a curse in a way. And now I'm going to be specific: whiteness, not whatever my lineage in Europe is, but like whiteness, the fact of a consolidated white identity that sees itself as inherently supreme, and superior to others. That to me is a curse, because it is again, like I said earlier, it's a means by which I am invited to live with the impression that if I'm in mutual relationship with others, that I'm somehow not as well off as I should be or could be. That something is missing if I am sharing life in a horizontal way with others who don't look like me or don't inherit the same things that I do. And so my invitation to white folks who pick up the title and consider it, and I hope that they'll take the time with it, is to see that this is an invitation, for everyone, but for white readers in particular, uh, to ask bigger questions about what they've inherited in order to find more freedom themselves. Now, this is not just about, this is not just for me about sacrificing my interests in order for others to be lifted up. Now, certainly there are times where I have done that and I will need to do that again, and that's a part of life for everybody. But I don't see as a whole the dynamic of racial difference and of things like that as a matter of me needing to sacrifice, because I take seriously what Fannie Lou Hamer and other Black radical feminists and freedom fighters have said for so long, which is that no one's free until we're all free, or no one's free until Black people are free, or Black women are free. There's different ways it's been rendered, but I have tried in recent years to really lean into pursuing the truth of that in my own life, which is to say that I am not just doing my organizing or doing my writing or my different interventions to try to help the world be a better place as an expression of me sacrificing my well-being. It's in pursuit of my own well-being as well, because if I really believe the truth of Hamer and even of King on interdependence and others, that you know that when others are made free, that actually improves my life. So that's me rejecting the lie that others' unfreedom is what makes me free. Like that's the lie of whiteness. And so I'm trying to actively pursue and believe, and even in the kind of minutia and in the dynamics of my relationships, although it's a learning curve, certainly, given what I've inherited. Um, but to believe that my freedom comes when others are made more free. So that's the pursuit, at least the aspiration.
Mm-hmm. There's an oxymoron in that also for me, frankly, is the whole idea of breaking a group of people's self-esteem, then to use them for your benefit means that basically the people who you're using for your benefit are broken people, which of course means where it is that you are on your way is severely hindered. Severely. It's kind of sort of like people during the time of chattel slavery, when they had a very mean and cruel massa, as they would call it, and the lady of the house would cuss at them and break them down, and then they would go in the kitchen and drop some urine in the soup. You know what I'm saying? and bust up laughing, you know, and take the soup on out to Massa and them and tell them, we want you to know we work diligently for this soup for you. This is some of the best soup you've ever had in your life. But what they have then is a knowing among themselves that the people who think they are in charge are actually experiencing some buffoonery, some payback that they're not even aware of. That is what my ancestors have had to do year after year after year, just to feel that we do have some power.
Mm-hmm.
And imagine if we actually did have mutuality in our understandings of one another, a lot of those realities would not have and would not continue to happen, because we really would have a real, honest to goodness, authentic relationship that gives everyone a level playing field. I just think that it's extremely, extremely important that we find our way. That's the only way we're going to heal our land. That's the only way we're going to heal our democracy. And it's the only way we're going to really help our children to also heal and grow.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bishop Flunder. Last question for you, Dr. Andrew. In somewhere in here in this book, you frame, and I love it, non-carceral modes of accountability. You talk about them being both ancient and prophetic. But what I do know is that many people still think nonviolent responses to harm are weak, they are rare, and even impossible. Why do you think that is?
Well, we're not very practiced in it, because frankly, in a lot of ways, it's the harder path. It is the path that's a bit more drawn out. It requires more of us, more of our agency, more of our participation in processes that are hard. And so it's easier to outsource response to harm to people with guns and cages and keys, because it lets us off the hook, and to not have to deal with the the complicated process of navigating what do you do after something terrible has happened. But I think that as you noted, that I note that there are an abundance of examples, ancient and contemporary, of people who have found other ways to respond to harm, that doesn't require destruction, and that actually, like I said moments ago, so often people either think the options we have are like a kind of vengeance, law and order mentality on the one hand, or just absolute forgiveness on the other. And I think that that's kind of it's a false presumption to think that those are our two only options. And that's what's I've learned so much from transformative justice and restorative justice practitioners, who will say that, we want more safety and healing than we're getting from prisons and police and jails and all of these systems, punitive systems, not less. That's one of the accusations made against abolitionists who dream of a world and think it's possible to build a world on the other side of police and prisons, is to say, oh, what, you just want chaos? You just want like anything goes, Wild West, like caricatures of, like just disorderly chaos. And no, the opposite is true. I quote somebody in the book who says that everybody wants abolition, or everyone wants safety for someone some of the time. Abolitionists want safety for everyone all of the time. It's a bigger and grander desire for safety, and it pursues it. It takes it more seriously, I would say, than our current systems do, because it actually tries to get to the root of why people hurt each other in the first place. What are the cycles of harm that people experience that leads them to become harmers? This kind of the cyclical nature of violence, that, if not interrupted, will continue unabated. And so non-carceral modes of accountability are ways of taking seriously the harm. So it's not about letting people off the hook, but it's also not about eliminating people from existence or from community, because it's built on the understanding that we find wholeness and healing and accountability only in community. If you're cut off from it, then how are you going to get well again if you're someone who has brought harm on somebody else? And likewise, how will you obtain healing and a sense of recompense or being able to start again if you're a survivor of some great harm, if not to be able to exercise your agency in helping to shape the outcome of what happens to the person who hurt you? And there's a myth out there that if you want to let survivors determine what happens, then it would just be what we have now, which is vengeance and punishment and throw away the key. And you've had all this weaponization of people's trauma in the form of naming laws after children who have been killed and things like that. When the reality is that, on the ground reality from people right now doing restorative justice with people who have committed serious violence, they're discovering that survivors of serious violence don't tend towards lock them up and throw away the key when given a choice. Not because they have huge forgiving hearts, but because they will get more out of a process that doesn't just throw the other person away, because their needs will be able to be heard and met and addressed and will exercise agency in the process, as opposed to the state taking all of your agency for you and saying, I represent you now and I'm going to punish this person on your behalf. That doesn't bring about healing for those harmed, doesn't bring about reform or restoration for those who've done the harm. And so these non-carceral modes of accountability are these promising ways that people are already practicing now, of creating life on the other side of trauma and violence and harm, that otherwise is not possible with what we currently have. So I'm a big believer and supporter, and I benefited myself in small ways from processes that take this kind of shape. So yeah, I hope I want to lift it up because it is a way forward that takes seriously harm, but that takes seriously the possibility that there are ways to deal with our problems that transcend just caging and harming people in response.
Yes, 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 yes. Amen. May I ask you just one more question?
Absolutely.
What would you say right now, brother? What would you say right now if you just had a moment to speak directly into the lives of people of color, our trans community, some of our people who are desperately afraid because they have lived through some things and they are seeing some of those things happening again?
Yes.
What would you say? What would be your words to speak into some of the really broken people and fearful people in the time that we are in right now?
I think two things. The first thing I want to say, to provide some perspective, so often the chaos of these moments, where a fascist, white supremacist, and all the other terms, is making decisions that are affecting people's real lives in such quick succession that it feels really terrifying. A bit of perspective, and I really sincerely do not intend this as as a cheap kind of word, but as a truly like a hope-filled word. There was a time before white supremacy and and heteropatriarchy and police and state violence, and there will be a time after them. We may not live to see it in our own bodies, but I believe part of my faith tells me that there was a time before these things and there will be a time after them. And that faith is what keeps me going. Now, that's just one word. That is not a word that speaks necessarily to the anxiety of the present moment exactly. To that moment, and to those who are really, living with great anxiety that they feel in particular places in their body when they hear any update about what is going on from the highest levels of power. To them, I want to say that I believe that there are more of us than there are of them at the end of the day, and that I speak as um, one of that majority that I believe exists, that uh, stand in a solidarity and in accompaniment. In my own community, I am doing the work necessary to, build some relational infrastructure that's a form of preparedness with friends who are more vulnerable, and even with our own family in the case that we have to step into a situation of solidarity that increases our own risk, perhaps of arrest or something like that. That we're getting our situation in order because we know that that time could come, and it's better to be prepared when those things arise and to be prepared to accompany our community and all those who are especially targeted and vulnerable in this time. So I am here for my people here in Nashville and beyond, as much as I can say that, beyond where I live. But certainly the people here, I am ready to go. To defend folks and to be a part of efforts that ensure protection and solidarity, and that ultimately, uh, you know, we will win, even if there is going to be great suffering in the meantime. So I hold fast to that, and I hope that others can find that hope, or at least find solace that others will hold that hope if they can.
Thank you from my heart. Thank you so very much.
Yes,
Absolutely.
we will win.
Amen.
And I believe that. Thank
Amen.
you for your fight and for the things that you will do and the ways that you will protect people as well as your family from what we know is unjust and unrighteous. We really appreciate you and thank you for your yes for tonight too as well. Thank you all
Thank
for
you.
watching. And so, we want to give away this book. We want to make sure we do that. Before we do that, we want to make sure that you put, first of all, hashtag Beyond the Gatekeepers. Please do that. And then we want to bring you to a commercial. So there are two advertisements that we want to read to you, but make sure you put hashtag Beyond the Gatekeepers. Yeah, do that for us. Put hashtag Beyond the Gatekeepers, give you opportunity to win. But then, there's also something that you should see down in the chat about how you can purchase the book. I think it's worthy of purchasing right now. So I appreciate you so very much. Bishop Flunder is going to read these next two.
God bless you, each of you who continue to support and also glean from Beyond the Gatekeepers in so many ways. I hope you've been helped tonight. I certainly have been. I'm encouraging you to support our broadcasts by sending a donation to keep us growing and expanding. Send it, please, to PayPal at www.paypal.me/TFAMJustice. Keep us out here, beloved, so that we can continue to make a clear, cogent difference in the time that we are in.
All right. I think we're supposed to have a flyer that talks about our conference, but our conference dates are, I believe, June 30th to July 6th.
Yes.
We will be in Atlanta. There we go. Atlanta, Georgia. Bishop Flunder is our presiding prelate, and our host will be 25 years. So we've got 25 years going on. Bishop Flunder will be 70 years old, and we have that going on. And we will also be having a white party and so many other wonderful things. State of the Union. There's going to be a 10 of meetings that's happening. So you're going to hear more about registration and the hotel. We just signed the contract on today, and so you're going to see a graphic, and we're looking forward to it. So we want you to meet us in Atlanta, Georgia, please. And thank you very much for our 25th Holy Convocation in celebration of that, and of course, our very own Bishop Yvette Flunder will be 70 years old. And then, of course, we're going to be talking about the state of the union. And so we want you to be there or be square.
I'm looking for you.
We are. We're hoping that people will come out. I'm looking forward, Bishop Flunder, to doing some Beyond the Gatekeepers interviews with folks. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be really, really great. All of the preachers, and we're going to have a time, Bishop Flunder. So we want to give away this book tonight, and we hope that you got your hashtag Beyond the Gatekeepers in. And Pastor Sue, thank you for tonight. She's going to give it a spin. Reverend DJ, God bless you. Nashville, Tennessee is a winner on tonight. That's wonderful. The author lives in Nashville, and the winner is from Nashville. So that's so good. Will you do me a favor? Go to the Beyond the Gatekeepers page. Make sure you go into our messenger. Give me your full name and address, and we'll get that to Reverend Andrew so that it can be I called you Reverend Andrew. Sorry, Dr. Andrew, so that it can be sent out to you. Thank you so much. We really enjoyed on tonight, and we want you all to come back again on next week. Have a wonderful evening, Dr. Andrew, Bishop Flunder. God bless you.
Thank you.